Chapter 17. The Wise Men from the East Who Followed the Star. Do you remember a few years ago when that star with the long tail appeared and caused such a stir among the people? Yes, there were rumors of disaster across the country, and talk of a new era even sparked whispers of rebellion. We struggled so much to interpret its meaning. Exactly. And who observes and interprets the stars? We do. So we should be able to predict the coming of the Christ you speak of by watching for changes in the heavens. What do you mean? I'm more of an expert at reading the stars than you, so let me explain. The magus chuckled. At last I had something to say to my friend. I thought I would die of frustration just sitting here and listening all this time. Listen carefully. Anyone who watches the skies knows that strange things often happen above us. Sometimes stars with tails, those ominous visitors, appear and disappear, or stars unseen before suddenly blaze forth and then vanish again. Sometimes wandering stars draw together, or stars fall like rain from the heavens. Our task is to interpret the meaning behind all these signs. Of course, part of the fun is debating those interpretations too. Anyway, there's a path the sun travels across the sky, and 12 constellations that move along that path. The 12 zodiac signs. Don't interrupt, I'll explain everything. Alright, the 12 zodiac signs, passed down from Sumer, each have their own meaning, and the answer lies there. I've heard that Jewish scholars see Pisces as the constellation that symbolizes their nation. So if a sign related to a king appears in Pisces, couldn't we interpret that as a sign of the coming of Christ? My friend's face changed to one of surprise. Yes, of course it's surprising. This is why I always come to this friend. Not only that, but if we interpret it together with other signs in the sky, we should certainly be able to know when the Christ you speak of is born. I guarantee it. The two men returned to their daily routines. As always, they poured their energy into researching countless records, observing the stars, and interpreting the signs of the times. The wise man, who had been immersed in the Bible, was now busy catching up on work he had put off, while the magus, who had received the rest of the Bible from his friend, began reading through it himself. What's all the fuss about? I really don't understand my friend's sudden decision to live according to the Bible. Of course, living righteously is a good thing, but even if you live that way, nothing changes. In fact, things might even get worse. Even if you try to live righteously, the world never leaves such people alone. In a world that preys on the slightest weakness, I don't know why he's chosen such a difficult path. To bring such hardship on himself at his age, he's truly pitiable. Since that day, my friend started observing the sky every day, no matter how busy he was. Though I was the one who said it, I'm actually skeptical about anything happening in Pisces. Seeing my friend so eagerly chasing after words I just tossed out, I feel a bit sorry. How could anything happen in just that part of the vast sky? The magus was sure of it. But several years later, it really happened. A few days ago, my friend came to me about some unusual movements in the sky, a meeting of two planets in an orbit that was easily predictable, not only by him, who was skilled in astronomy, but even by his friend. Jupiter and Saturn were moving over a long period to become one in Pisces. Look, it's happening in Pisces just as you said. Jupiter and Saturn will soon meet. Astrologically, Jupiter is a star symbolizing great fortune or kings, while Saturn has ominous meanings like poverty and loneliness, doesn't it? That's right. Then isn't this the perfect sign for a Jewish king who will be unjustly killed? My friend's words made some sense. But that doesn't guarantee they're correct, does it? Is there really a need to interpret it that way? Just because it's happening in Pisces, does it have to be about the Jewish king? It could be about our own king. You're saying dangerous things, my friend. Don't get so worked up over words I just tossed out. And even if we interpret it as symbolizing Judea, wouldn't it make more sense to see it as a sign of trouble for the current Jewish king, rather than Christ? I've just received news that there have been ongoing power struggles in Herod's palace. That could be, but couldn't it also be a sign related to Christ? The meeting of the stars in Pisces at this time must have meaning. I don't think so. If something similar happens again, then I'll consider your opinion, but it's too much to interpret it that way based on just this one event. Seeing my friend accept my words, I felt relieved. If Christ really comes, that means the last days will follow, and that can't happen. No, that shouldn't happen. However, contrary to the Magus' belief that nothing like this would happen again, Jupiter and Saturn met and became one in Pisces 2 more times before the year was out. Each time, his friend came and argued that it should be interpreted as a sign of Christ's coming, but he simply couldn't accept it. To him, it only signaled a crisis facing the current Jewish dynasty. The Magus strongly presented his interpretation to the royal court, to scholars across the country, and to the people, who were shocked by the repeated astronomical phenomenon, believing it was the most rational explanation. As the Magus said, there was never a peaceful day in Herod's palace, so his argument gradually gained support. But every time he looked up at the sky, he felt an inexplicable anxiety. The question of whether his friend might be right kept repeating in his mind, and each time he lashed out, insisting his friend knew nothing about the stars. In truth, he was running from his own feelings. Have you packed everything? Yes. Seeing his friend's face full of joy, he felt a bit resentful for having been afraid all this time. Why was his friend so cheerful when the last days of the world might be coming? Even after Jupiter and Saturn met 3 times, and even after Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars came together the following year, the Magus did not budge from his interpretation of a crisis for Judea. Mars, known as a minor malefic star associated with conflict or struggle, joined Saturn, the major malefic star, and together they gathered near Jupiter, which represents kings. This alignment made the meaning increasingly similar to the life of Christ his friend described, so at that time he almost acknowledged his friend's theory. But he stubbornly rationalized his own interpretation to the end. However, when he saw a bright new star suddenly appear in Capricorn early this year, he had to admit his friend was right. Christ had actually been born. Capricorn's ruling planet is Saturn, and a new star appearing there could be interpreted as an ominous event, perhaps like the last days the Bible speaks of. Also, since Capricorn is where Jupiter receives its worst influence, this became a chance to reflect on the signs that had appeared over the past several years. In truth, he had been afraid all along. While he admitted that his friend's logic was sound, he worried about what he and his family should do if the end of the world came. The Magus had fallen into a kind of lethargy for a long time afterward. The thought that the end of the world was coming anyway made him wonder what the point was in working or earning money. Seeing him like this, his friend kept persuading him that it would be better for his peace of mind to go and see for himself, rather than continue living in fear. So the two decided to set out for Judea. They packed their belongings and gifts to present if they happened to meet Christ and left their homes. As they were leaving the city, a young scholar approached them. "Greetings, scholars." "Oh, hello. It's been a while." "How have you been?" "Not so well." "You two haven't changed a bit." "Ha ha. Where are you headed?" "We're going to Judea to check on something." "What do you need to check?" "This friend of mine keeps insisting we go see the Jewish king who was born." He ignored his friend's look of disbelief. If he couldn't find joy even in this, how could he manage such a long journey? "Scholars, if it's all right, may I join you?" You. Why would you want to join us on such a difficult journey? I just feel like I want to go too. Let's rest at my house for a bit, then set out together. The expedition of the three wise men, now joined by the young scholar, who brought a third gift, left the Parthian capital. I've been curious about what's happened these past few years. If it's about the Christ coming to Judea, as you say, it makes sense. You think so too, right? No. Why do you accept things so quickly? Don't you have any skepticism? What use is skepticism in the pursuit of truth? Come to think of it, isn't Pisces the last constellation of the 12 zodiac signs? When that constellation ends, it starts again from Aries. It may be a coincidence, but the current vernal equinox point is in Aries. If it's as you scholars say, couldn't we interpret it as Christ being unjustly killed in Pisces, Judea, and a new era represented by Aries beginning? Like winter ending and spring coming, people suffering in difficult times gaining new life again. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. The two scholars were speechless at the young scholar's words. How could he think of such things? Their amazement showed on their faces and in their voices. No, we really could see it that way. Where did you suddenly come from? The young scholar, blushing, quickly changed the subject. Scholars, where do you think this Christ, the King of the Jews, is now? According to the records, he's supposed to be born in Bethlehem. But it's been over 2 years since we first observed that star, so I'm not sure if he's still there. Just because the star appeared then doesn't guarantee he was born at that exact time. It could have been a sign appearing in advance. That's true. The Jews have waited so long for Christ, so the most reasonable answer is that he's in their capital, Jerusalem. You think so? I'm not sure. Trust me. What people would mistreat their own king? Especially a king they've waited for so long. Surely they must be honoring Christ in Jerusalem and treating him with the utmost respect. If not in the palace, then surely in the temple. Once again, the magus stubbornly insisted on his interpretation. But since there was no evidence against it, the other two scholars agreed to go to Jerusalem for now. The three wise men set out northwest along the Euphrates River. They would pass through Haran and turn south into Canaan, following the same path Abraham took long ago when he set out in faith at God's word. It didn't matter who first believed the prophecy, who was more certain of it, or who joined the journey with no expectations. What mattered was that these three Gentiles were traveling together to meet Christ, who had come into the world. Their journey toward Christ, the light of the world, would remain forever in people's memories, like the stars in the sky.